I have decided to do my online research presentation on the topic of the school-to-prison pipeline in New York City public schools. Let me begin by providing a comprehensive definition of the school-to-prison pipeline. According to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP, this pipeline serves as a system that funnels students out of schools and into the streets and the juvenile correction system. By doing this, it ultimately deprives children and youth of meaningful opportunities for education, future employment, and participation in our democracy. The underlying problem with the school-to-prison pipeline is the use of court referrals as a means for disciplining kids in schools. However, the juvenile justice system is not equipped to treat nonviolent behavioral issues. The school-to-prison pipeline is responsible for police surveillance and use of metal detectors within public schools in urban areas. It is this constant criminalization of youth via harsh disciplinary policies in schools that puts students in direct contact with law enforcement officials. And, as a result, schools ultimately become less of an environment that promotes learning and instead reinforces harmful racial stereotypes that perceive racial ethnic people as criminal. I want to contemplate if it is possible to dismantle this type of institutionalized racism, and if so, what actions will be the most effective. For this particular research project, I will look at various case studies from schools in Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Harlem. The types of policies that help to maintain the school-to-prison pipeline include zero-tolerance policies that mandate severe punishments for both minor and major infractions, the exclusion of students from schools through suspensions and expulsions, and the presence of on-site police officers who take authority away from school staff. Therefore, the stakeholders and constituents who are involved in the maintenance of the school-to-prison pipeline are police officers, school principals, teachers, local and state lawmakers, and Board of Education staff. Additionally, the school-to-prison pipeline is supported and funded by the U.S. government. I argue that the school-to-prison pipeline is inherently unethical due to the ways that it deliberately targets racial ethnic students. My hypothesis is as follows. If the school-to-prison pipeline is not dismantled, then Black youth and adolescents will never have the opportunity to reach their full academic potential. Because of systemic racism among the judicial system, if this is brought into schools, then the racial inequality within such institutions will only amplify the prison industrial complex. First, I want to provide a bit of background on public education in New York City and give a racial breakdown of each borough. There are very distinct racialized geographies of the 5 boroughs that make up New York City. As of 2018, the boroughs with the highest concentrated minority communities are the Bronx and Manhattan. The Bronx consists of 43.6% Black or African American and 56.4% Hispanic or Latino. 15.5% of Manhattan's population is Black or African American and is concentrated in the upper region of Harlem. Public schools with the highest percentage of metal detectors and police personnel often happen to reside within these 2 boroughs. According to the official website of the New York City Department of Education, New York City's public school system is the largest in the world, with a budget of nearly $25 billion. 92% of all students who are arrested and 91.7% of all students who have received a criminal summons in schools are Black or Latino. In fact, police are 8.3 times more likely to intervene if a student is Black, and 4.4 times more likely to intervene if the student is Latino. Every year, New York City's school-to-prison pipeline costs approximately $746 million. The first question I ask is, what is the relationship between race, class, crime, and justice? To understand this complex relationship, one must first understand that much of the criminal justice system was built and honed during the Jim Crow era, and the establishment of the prison industrial complex only helped to preserve the racial order. It served to keep Black people in their place. Historically, crime and punishment have provided the most powerful and long-lasting racial divides in this country, and the evolution of the prison industrial system has perpetuated the perceived criminality of Black and brown adults and youth. Systemic racism works to maintain a wealth gap that hinders any chance of upward socioeconomic mobility for racial ethnic minorities. This form of racism is also to blame for the mass incarceration of racial ethnic people. The second question I consider is whether or not there is a way to incentivize the deconstruction of the school-to-prison pipeline. Numerous studies have shown that suspensions and expulsions have a correlation with the high dropout rates and coming in contact with the juvenile justice system. And African American and Hispanic students are suspended or expelled at a rate of almost 3.5 times greater than Caucasian students. The key agents for change include teachers, school guidance counselors, school nurses, and other school personnel who interact regularly with students. There are societal issues that will not be solved solely within schools. It is necessary to take action to create a society that meets the needs of all children. This calls for the creation of safe spaces for at-risk children to receive counseling, recreational activities, job training, and education. Deconstructing this prison pipeline is about mobilizing community members to prevent juvenile delinquency and crime. Additionally, it is about implementing practical prevention and intervention solutions that will improve the lives of these children and make schools safe for everyone. The third question explores if public schools have a responsibility to keep their students in the classroom and out of the juvenile detention centers. School administration can start creating nurturing, positive, and safe environments that boost student achievement and success. They should also redesign discipline policies and practices, properly training staff, and have more engagement with families. However, the school-to-prison pipeline cannot be solved with a one-size-fits-all universal approach. Educational curriculum and educational discipline should include a combination of targeted and universal educational methods. One way to support students is by adopting restorative justice curriculums, which promote social, civic, and financial literacy. Restorative justice is an approach to discipline that engages all people impacted by an issue or behavior. It allows for students, teachers, families, schools, and communities to resolve conflict, promote academic achievement, and address school safety. To understand the powerful impact of school-based restorative justice practicing, it is important to consider the negative impacts of zero tolerance and other punitive discipline measures. It has been documented that punitive school discipline policies not only deprive students of educational opportunities, but also fail to make schools safer. The primary function of the restorative practice is to reintegrate the student into the school community, rather than removing the student and increasing the potential for separation and resentment. Stereotypes from the media perpetuate the criminality of Black and brown youth in America. 19th century minstrel shows often used blackface, where white actors would humiliate Black people as a form of entertainment for white families. Although these are only two examples, numerous race films during the later years provided a similar message to viewers that Black people were unintelligent, aggressive, and criminals. Racial ethnic minority are often hyper-surveilled by police officers and school teachers, almost anticipating that they will act out. However, this is shown to contribute to the decline in graduation rates among racial ethnic children, taking away their self-governance and opportunity to succeed as adults. Now I want to consider if the gentrification of Harlem, the Bronx, and Manhattan heightens the need for police personnel to surveil minority students. Gentrification is defined as the process of changing the characteristics of a neighborhood through increasing the number of affluent residents and businesses. It often increases the economic value of a neighborhood. Gentrification can lead to population migration and displacement when a neighborhood's racial ethnic composition is impacted by new and more expensive housing. Harlem, the Bronx, and Manhattan have undergone serious gentrification over the course of many years, which has contributed to the concentration of racial ethnic minority communities in particular areas of the boroughs. I believe that redlining is to blame for the increase in police surveillance in New York City public schools. Systemic racism perceives racial ethnic children to be aggressive and a potential danger to society. And these areas with higher minority populations are often divested from local and state government funding. I have concluded that gentrification plays a significant role in the devaluation of racial ethnic students and the increased use of police personnel in schools. In striving to cater for wealthy prospective tenants, the New York state government jeopardizes the psychological and physical well being of its most vulnerable students. As a result, students in redlined districts are viewed as expendable, just like their communities. In conclusion, the school to prison pipeline is a reflection of the racial tensions in America. It is imperative that the pipeline is deconstructed, and this starts with educators. Educators should engage in improved classroom management courses and should be required to learn about the issue of systemic racism and the ways that this often manifests within school settings. The overflooding of racial ethnic youth and adults in the prison system is an astonishing truth about the current scale of racism in this country and how little progress we as a nation have come since the Jim Crow era.